Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says that we're just in a slow growth transition phase rather than a recession. New York City mayor is freaking out over all the illegal immigrants that are coming and pouring into his city. We have climate extremists using some crazy tactics to push their narrative, and Joe Biden makes a gaffe on Twitter. All that and more here on The Bald Brad Show. Welcome to The Bald Brad Show. It is Tuesday, July 26th, and as always, I couldn't be happier than to spend these fine mornings with all of you, my friends and true American patriots, where we can come together as a community, go over the stories of the day, and bring you all the news and information you need to know about. So as always, if you want to support us here at The Bald Brad Show and you're over at YouTube, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you're over at Rumble, hit the plus and give us a comment down below. And if you're listening on any of the podcast airwaves, Apple, Google, Spotify, etc., leave us a lovely 5-star review. Your help and support would be greatly appreciated. And not only would you be supporting conservative, but you'd be helping getting conservative thought and ideas out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So again, your help and support would be greatly appreciated. With that being said, a lot of news to cover today regarding Democrats, their narrative spinning on the economy, regarding the recession. You have the New York mayor freaking out regarding illegal immigration, which is just a fault of his own party. Then you got these climate extremists gluing all their body parts to everything. The street, road signs, paintings. I mean, it's so odd. And you got Joe Biden making a gaffe on Twitter. So as always, folks, a lot of stuff just to go over here. Let's start with our lead story of the day regarding the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen claiming that the United States economy is not in a recession, but rather a period of transition in which growth is slowing. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? Leave it up to the Democrat Party to come up with this type of messaging. And they've been using this type of transitioning, for a while now, starting with Jen Psaki, and now it's Karine Jean-Pierre. And it's no wonder Jen Psaki and the communications director took a boot, right? Because the messaging is just horrible, and you have to be chauffeured out and utilize this type of narrative each and every week, which is just a bunch of BS, and we're about to prove it right now with the numbers. So when pressed by NBC host Chuck Todd over the weekend, Yellen said that growth is slowing. Even though output appears to be turning negative for a sustained period of time, the remarks come ahead of the Bureau of Economic Analysis publishing an advanced estimate of second quarter GDP growth later this week, a reading that is expected to show that the economy has shrank at 1.6% annualized pace from April to June. I mean, it's shrinking, folks. I mean, this is by definition a recession, right? When you have 2 quarters that show shrinking and show a decline, it is by definition a recession. Check this out. Because the economy likewise contracted at a 1.5% rate in the first quarter, the United States may have experienced 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, meeting the rule of thumb definition for a recession. Yet Yellen, who admitted last month that when she was wrong about the path of inflation would take, she dismissed such claims. So, I mean, she says one thing, right, and was wrong, and then she says another thing, and she's expected to be right, even though she's wrong again. I mean, she's shooting herself in the foot and the Biden White House administration, because we have evidence here to show and prove that they're wrong, and they're telling us one thing, and again, reality is showing us something else, which is a common theme with this White House. Quote, "This is not an economy that's in a recession," she told Todd, "but we're in a period of transition in which growth is slowing, and that's necessary and appropriate, and we need to be growing at a steady and sustainable pace." So there's a slowdown, and businesses can see that, and that's appropriate given that people now have jobs and we have a strong labor market. Yellen also pointed to low joblessness as an indicator of strong economic performance. Although unemployment remains at 3.6%, a significant improvement from the 14.7% level seen in April 2020, labor force participation has not recovered from pre-recession levels, contributing to worker shortages that increase expenses for businesses and prices for consumers. It's amazing that the White House would want to utilize the 14.7% as kind of a victory lap in terms of getting low numbers. You just shut down the entire economy. Obviously, when things open back up, you're going to have some sort of significant increase or decrease depending on what you're doing. If you're shutting things back down again or you're opening things back up, obviously the numbers would be better, but you're going to boast and do victory laps on this. Again, it's all about the messaging, folks. It's all about the narrative. Arguing that you don't see any of the signs of a broad economic contraction, Yellen referred to solid consumer spending figures. Although a report from the Department of Commerce shows the national retail sales grew by 1% last month, the CPI rose 1.3% over the same period, implying that higher price levels played a significant role in higher spending rather than true gains in economic activity. So she's going to boast one thing. And then again, when we dive into reality, the numbers and what's actually taking place, it says something different. God, it's unbelievable, folks. You try to wrap your head around this because they must think we're all dumb. They must think the American public is just a bunch of idiots, that we can't see old footage of them doing something. We can't see them saying something and then something else is taking place, or that they're saying something. We go through the numbers and reality showing something different. It's as if none of this exists to them. It's just a bunch of liars. Bunch of freaking liars. Indeed, the White House, which repeatedly insisted in recent weeks that the nation is stronger economically than we have seen in history, has been laying out its economic case ahead of the Bureau of Economic Analysis growth report. Why do you need to lay anything out if we're stronger economically than ever before? What's there to lay out? You should be chanting and raving. You should be doing your own victory laps regarding how strong the economy is. And in a nutshell, you kind of are doing that. But now we're sitting here contradicting the very narrative that you're pushing. So do what you want, White House. It's not going to help you in November, and it sure in hell ain't going to help you in 2024. While some maintain that two consecutive quarters of falling real GDP constitute a recession, that is neither the official definition nor the way economists evaluate the state of the business cycle, the White House said Thursday. Where did they get this? I don't know. I really don't know. They just make stuff up. It's a basic knowledge of a rule of thumb that you would learn in high school about what a recession is. I mean, this is as basic as you can get. And somehow they just pull this stuff out of thin air. They really pull it out of their you know what, but we're trying to keep it PG here in the Bald Brad Show. Instead, both official determinations of recession and economist assessment of economic activity are based on a holistic look at the data, including the labor market, consumer and business spending, industrial production, and incomes. Based on these data, it is unlikely that the decline in GDP in the first quarter of this year, even if followed by another GDP decline in the second quarter, indicates a recession. Does anybody here believe that? Does anybody on the show actually believe that hocus pocus crap that they just threw in our face? As the saying goes, we're all now dumber for having to listen what the White House just said. At no point did they ever come to a complete thought or coherent sentence. Again, we are all now dumber for having to listen to the White House. As President Joe Biden's approval rating continues to plummet, news of recession would serve to worsen Democrats' chances in the upcoming midterm elections. Yeah, Joe Biden hasn't done anything right. I mean, literally everything gets worse week after week, month after month, really, right? Or quarter after quarter. I mean, he's still exceeding records. He's still breaking expectations, folks, with things going in a decline. But hey, nothing to see here. Everything's fine, folks. Joblessness, we have good numbers there. People are paying more at the retail stores, but while at the same time CPI is going up, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Don't look under the hood, folks, because you're not going to find an engine. Joe Biden's brains left, as well as the Democrat Party, long, long ago. That brings us to our next story here regarding New York City Mayor Eric Adams admitting Sunday that public schools, the healthcare system, and infrastructure are going to be inundated with the influx of migrants from the U.S.-Mexico border. Yeah, who could have thought? I feel like there's a group of people that have been talking about this for years, that our infrastructure can't handle a massive illegal immigration and migrant surge. Oh, yeah, they're called Republicans and conservatives. But now when it's actually happening, you have Democrats freaking out and they don't know what to do. And they're going to put this burden on the taxpayers. The messaging. Again, it all comes back to the messaging. It's so baffling. As illegal immigrants and other migrants arriving to the Big Apple on buses from southern border states stretch the city's homeless shelters thin, Adams implored that all New Yorkers must welcome and fall in line with the city's plans to house the influx of people, saying everyone's block is going to be impacted by this. So now the taxpayers, in some cases, are going to actually have to use their own quarters to house these people. Furthermore, they're talking about paying for hotel fees for these illegal immigrants. So the taxpayers getting hit with this burden again. But guess who they're going to blame? Just if you had to guess. Rationale would say, hey, your own party and Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, everybody in the administration. No. They're blaming the southern states, folks. The border states. I'm not kidding. Check this quote out. We're looking at the potential of emergency shelters and hotels. in other facilities. We want to get our faith-based community involved. If there ever was an all-hands-on-deck moment, this is it, Adams said at an unrelated press conference before criticizing the callousness of southern border states instead of the Biden administration for its immigration policy. Oh my God. Either they're just that dumb or they're just that corrupt and liars. Maybe both can be true at the same time. I'm not so sure. But he said, quote, our system was inundated with those who were seeking shelter because of the callousness of the states that pushed them out. Push them out? Yeah, in some sense, they are being bussed out, but voluntarily, and they're going where they want to go. So now that they're all going to your home state, your home area, now you're freaking out because your infrastructure can't handle it. But you're the ones that wanted this. This is the very thing that your party and the president that you voted for wanted. We can't have the historical, I believe they should be housed, but just don't house them on my block. Everyone's block is going to be impacted by this. I hope you love being in New York. By the way, new data just came out that New York is one of the biggest places that are fleeing to Florida is New Yorkers going to Florida. Gee, I wonder why. We have to add our advocacy with our ability to help our neighbors. And we need everyone on board with this, the mayor said, because as I stated last week, our schools are going to be impacted. Our healthcare system is going to be impacted. Our infrastructure is going to be impacted, but we're going to be willing to do our job. We're going to do our job, and we're going to need all New Yorkers to be with us. Yeah. Wait till he starts raising taxes on you even higher because you got to pay for all this stuff. Somehow you got to get the money to house these immigrants. Somehow you got to get the money to clean up the streets. Somehow you got to get the money to pay for their meals in school. Somehow you got to get the money to pay for the health care. It's just like Democrats suck at everything, man. It's true. I mean, government sucks at everything, but really, I mean, Democrats really suck at everything. And then when they create a problem, they're just going to blame everybody else for their problem. But what's new? We see it with Black Lives Matter. Some guy shoots and kills somebody. Police officers shoot at him because he shot at them. He dies and they go and complain about the police officers rather than the person that committed the crime. Very similar to what you see from the Democrat Party. No personal responsibility. Sunday's press conference was hosted by the mayor and New York City Health, plus hospitals to announce the launch of a new student loan forgiveness program. Jesus. It's just like, hey, you're going to have to house some illegal immigrants. Oh, by the way, we're going to just tack on some more tax dollars here by saying, hey, we're going to forgive new student loan forgiveness for behavioral health providers. Funded by a $1 million contribution from an anonymous donor, Adams also explained how the city addressed housing its homeless before the surge asylum seekers. This is an opportunity of New Yorkers to move away from not in my background. We all must share the crisis. At least he acknowledges that there's a crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border because according to the Biden administration, it's just a challenge. Our approach has been divided up the homeless issue prior to the asylum seekers by city council matter districts. We present to all the council persons who had a meeting with all the council persons and we showed them the shelters they have in their location. And we said, let's partner together as we deal with the New York problem. These are our neighbors and we have to identify as a council person, partner. Is he using council person because he doesn't want to use council men and women because it's not inclusive? That's really why I'm laughing. I couldn't figure it out because that council person word it's just odd to say. So partner with them and ask where they would like the shelters to be in their district, particularly those with little or no shelters. Now with this influx of people seeking asylum and support, now we have to get beyond that. So like we said, we want them to seek out asylum within their own country, stay within their own nations, and not just let them loose into our country because again, now we're footing the bill. The localities are footing the bill. The states are footing the bill. The federal government is footing the bill, which at the end of the day, it's you and I. It's you and I paying for all this, paying for a problem that the Democrats created. It's unbelievable. Democrats want to figure out this climate crisis by shelling out more money, $3 billion to build freaking wind turbines, according to Joe Biden. And then furthermore, they want us to shell out more money on illegal immigration to pay for everything for them. It's just money here, money there. Let's raise your taxes, all these things. The economy's just in a transition phase when in actuality it's in a recession. But hey, you know what? Consumers spent more, but it turns out that they spent more on average for those products and goods and services, which is why at the end of the day, that increase went up, which is what Janet Yellen was citing. As I'm saying, folks, that's the theme of today. The messaging from the Democrat Party is trash. It's complete trash. It's a bunch of hocus pocus, a bunch of smoke. And there's freaking fire everywhere. And you're looking around. They're trying to tell you there's no fire. They're just gaslighting you left and right. So there you have it. New York mayor is just complaining about his own party's problems, but he's going to blame the Republicans and conservatives, in a nutshell, Texas, Arizona, the border states, for the influx of illegal immigration. You can't make this up. You really can't. Speaking of things you can't make up, this one is baffling. This one had me cracking up. So climate change activists in the US and across the world are ramping up their actions in what they would say is an attempt to save the planet. So these people have been around, honestly, for decades, but it's just crazy. As the older I get, the willingness of what these people are willing to do for climate change is really baffling. So in recent months, far-left activists have glued themselves to famous paintings, disrupted new pipeline construction, scaled buildings, blocked rush hour traffic, lit themselves on fire. That's not funny, but I don't know how that helps anything. I can't do it. I told myself when I was going to do this story, hold it together. Look, lighting themselves on fire is not funny. It's just the aspect of they think that this is actually going to solve things. When you light yourself on fire, I'm not going to take you seriously. I'm just not. Well, they threatened to disrupt the congressional baseball game and slashed tires of random sport utility vehicles in cities around the world. You know, if there's anything like getting people on board for your narrative and a movement, it's really just slashing their tires that's going to do it. Or lighting yourself on fire, I suppose. The activists have argued that world governments have failed citizens by not acting aggressively enough to enact policies curbing warming. Very similar to the language that you had Greta Thunberg proposed. You're not doing enough. You're evil, you bastards. You're sick. I don't love you. I love people that want to glue their hands to artwork. She didn't really say that, but it's not too far from something she would probably say. Am I not right? Quote, we cannot continue to wait around for a bunch of corporate shills in Congress to do nothing while people are dying, Greenpeace USA Senate climate campaigner Ashley Thompson said last week. Greenpeace is one of the oldest environmental organizations of its kind in the world, and its international affiliates have staged multiple direct actions this year, ranging from scaling a venue, hosting a major conference in France, to blocking a ship from departing in a Dutch port, to climbing a deep-sea mining vessel in the North Sea. Such actions have seemingly become more common in the face of what activists deem an impending global disaster. Now, a portion of this does kind of make sense in terms of what they're doing, because these people in their mind really think the world is going to end. So if you thought the world was literally going to end based on other people's actions of, their footprints, then you would probably glue yourself or glue your face to a board or sew your face to a rug. I don't know what the hell you would do, but these people believe in this stuff so wholeheartedly that they would literally light themselves on fire. It's crazy. Quote, climate change is the only issue where, in the worst case, it really would affect the ability of our citizens our civilization to continue, rather. The threat there is just much higher. Climate activist Ken Ward told Fox News Digital in an interview, quote, if you do a bad job on clean water, then you've got some polluted water. You can recoup that. With the worst case in climate change, that's not an option. Well, if you polluted the water and you're able to kind of fix it and revamp it and make it better, you can do the same with climate change. I mean, that's the whole purpose of you doing all this movement, right? Is to kind of fix it, bring awareness to it. So, I mean, you can fix it. It's going to take some time. You can't always force it upon people, which is what they want to do. You want to have governments force certain policies, force certain regulations upon people rather than just letting things happen naturally. Quote, if you are on track to have the southern part of our nation unlivable and also dehydrated in 20 years or less, what do you do about that? Ward continued. If there was an agreement that was a serious threat, then we would drop other things that we are doing and pay attention to that. I mean, again, these people are part of the Democrat Party primarily. I'm not saying there aren't some climate alarmists in the Republican Party. I do think the climate is changing. I do agree with that. Who's to blame for it? How do we solve it? I think that's where we divide on policy, on terms of again, regulation, forcing things upon companies that maybe shouldn't be enforced on. All these things, spending $3 billion for windmills, and then wanting to put solar panels and windmills all across the United States as if that's going to do something, when a lot of conservatives and Republicans, we want nuclear power. It's clean. It's good. It's better than windmills and solar panels. It uses a less of a footprint than what they would be proposing if they were to put in place windmills and turbines. It's as if they didn't think about how they're going to solve the problem. They just want to say there's a problem out there. And then not only do they want to present how to fix it, but how they want to fix it is just, it's asinine. It's just completely asinine. In October 2016, Ward closed the valve to a pipeline transporting crude oil from Western Canada to Mount Vernon, Washington, as part of a coordinated action. The same day, fellow activists who, along with Ward, were collectively known as the valve turners, shut off valves to similar pipelines in Montana, North Dakota, and Minnesota. I'm sorry, you're called the valve turners? It's so stupid. It's like Home Alone. What were they called? The Wet Bandits? Well, we're the Wet Bandits, Mav. Come on, man. Oh, it's like a high school band. We're the valve turners, dude. I don't take any of this seriously, as you could tell. Again, I'm all for people having clean energy. I want to breathe clean air. I want to drink clean water. I'm all with it, but I mean, these tactics are just so baffling. Ward, who eventually pled guilty to trespassing, followed the incident, told Fox News Digital that such action is necessary if there's political gridlock and all the ordinary processes aren't working. Activists like Ward often cite United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports and the so-called Climate Clock, an online tool developed in 2020 to highlight how long humanity has left to limit global warming. So there's this clock going, kind of like what AOC was pushing. We have 12 years before we die. Push the Green New Deal, revamp everything, spend like $92 trillion on just giving everybody basically a zero carbon footprint and just six asinine things. It's like if you were to go to like second grade and some kid just yelled out something ridiculous and you're kind of like, oh, okay, like not going to acknowledge that, but that was a little weird. That's the Democrat Party for you. For decades, fossil fuel corporations paid millions to confuse the public, contradict the science, and falsely claim that climate change was a hoax. Climate Clock co-founder Gan Golan told Fox News Digital that the tactic isn't working anymore because the results are plain for all of us to see. So they have rolled out a new tactic, delay. Climate delay has become the new climate denial. So even if you believed in climate change, and you're trying to delay certain things from happening to make sure that those things that you're trying to delay actually solve the problem and curb the problem, all of a sudden you're still a climate denier. This is like that same idea of when those people say that you're racist and you're like, I'm not racist. And they go, well, you're white and you need to acknowledge that you're racist. And you're like, okay, I'm not racist. Well, the fact that you say you're not racist still makes you racist. That's kind of the whole idea that they're pushing here, very similar to the progressive left in terms of racism. Quote, in a democracy, if citizens believe their leaders are putting corporate interest over their own lives, they're going to exercise their First Amendment rights, he added. Young people have been leading the way, and it's time for everyone else who cares about their future to join them. Oh, because you're not involved in all this? You don't care about your future, folks. You don't care about anybody else's future because you're a climate denier. It might be happening around you. You might not be fully supportive in what they're doing, like gluing their faces to a freaking rug or lighting themselves on fire. And if you're not into that, hey, you're a climate denier. Of course, I'm being a little bit facetious here and joking just a little bit. It's just, the progressive left, I have a tough time. I have a tough time taking them seriously. And this is why I love politics. I thrive on politics because it's craziness. It's just a clown show. It's stand-up comedy to me when you see Joe Biden go out there, when you got Kamala Harris going out there, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Ilhan Omar, the Democrat Party. I can't help but laugh. Look, Donald Trump's a little bit funny too, right? That's why I say, you're the best, okay? See you there, Jimmy Costa, you're the best, okay? You guys are the best. Like, Trump was funny to me. I love politics. So the Climate Clock algorithm currently pegs a deadline for action limiting warming at a 1.5 degrees Celsius at around July 2029. So this is like the doomsday, okay? I'm sure it will change. The clock always changes. It was supposed to be 12 years. Now it's 10 or whatever. Friday marked the group's first climate emergency day when the clock goes from 7 years to 6 years. Oh, so it really is changing. It's just going faster. Because governments and politicians have failed to protect us from this danger, we must protect ourselves, says the website. A UK group whose members have deflated SUV tires around the cities of US, Canada, and Europe. I can't. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I'm laughing so much. I really do my best to keep it together on these shows because behind the scenes, without you guys knowing, when I'm preparing, I am cracking up because it's unbelievable to me that some of this is taken seriously. Some of it obviously isn't, but God, we live in 2022 and you wouldn't think that this type of stuff exists. People slashing tires, lighting themselves on fire, gluing their faces to to freaking paintings, gluing their hands to paintings. Some guy like cemented himself in the pavement. It's nuts. So there's different video clips that we have here of people doing all sorts of shenanigans. Let's go ahead and roll it.
More. This will mean over 20% of the landmass of this planet becoming uninhabitable. We are here beneath this magnificent, beautiful painting today to join the dots. We are facing an era of multiple breadbasket failure. Crops are failing now all across the planet. India has stopped exporting any wheat. The Po River in Italy is drying up. This is Leonardo da Vinci's own country here. It provides the country with a huge amount of agriculture. Our future is...
We're asking President Biden to declare a climate emergency and to stop all extraction on federal and indigenous land. The recent IPCC report, that's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, says that we have a brief and rapidly closing window to address the climate crisis. And one of the world's top scientists, Sir David King, recently said that we have basically 2 to 3 years to take drastic action on the climate, and the government isn't listening.
So as you know, the White House said Tuesday that Biden is still considering declaring a climate emergency after Senator Joe Manchin effectively killed Democrats' hopes for sweeping climate legislation last week. However, Biden opted against making such a pronouncement this week, instead announcing a series of executive actions during a speech in Massachusetts on Wednesday, which we covered here on the show. So because he doesn't get his way, he's going to make sure he does by putting through executive actions. And look, I wasn't a big fan of it when Trump did it, which is why I've stated many times I'm just not a big fan of presidents using executive orders, executive actions to get their way. There's a process. We are a republic and a democracy. Let's use the process that's in place. You're not always going to get what you want. Hey, again, that's why we live in this great nation called the United States. Now, speaking of this great nation, well, this great nation thought it was a great idea to vote Biden in office, and we have another gaffe here, and it's not on a teleprompter. It's not Joe Biden just speaking freely. You would imagine this thing would have been vetted and kind of skimmed through, and I'm not even so sure the guy made it himself. But hey, it just shows you inconsistencies. Gaffes just run a-wire through the freaking administration. So President Joe Biden continued to brag about gas prices falling by a small amount on Twitter Monday morning, to mockery of users. Now remember, I was told by one of his advisors that he wasn't taking a victory lap on gas prices. And then literally like minutes later, he was posting about gas prices going down. He's still posting and talking about it. And now we got a gaffe here of him posting and talking about it. Quote, "For American families looking for a little more breathing room, these savings matter," Biden's presidential account tweeted. The tweet also included a graphic informing followers that at current prices, the average driver will spend $35 less per month for one person, or $70 less per month for a family with 2 cars. Wow. They would have if gas prices stayed at their peak. Social media users once again attacked Biden for attempting to take credit for lower gas prices, while many still face near record levels. So at one end, he doesn't want to take credit for gas prices increasing, but he wants to take credit for gas prices decreasing. Again, theme here, folks, the messaging. The messaging and hypocrisy is crazy. Washington Examiner and Daily Signal contributor Nicole Russell tweeted, "But I thought you had nothing to do with gas prices." Yep, I agree, Nicole. I agree 100% with you. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy wrote, "In other words, Americans are paying over $100 more a month per person to fill up their gas tanks than when Biden took office." Washington Examiner reporter Andrew Kerr noted, "The figures in Biden's tweet this morning assume that the average person is consuming 50 gallons a month per vehicle. 2 cars equals 100 gallons of gas, $70 in savings a month for an average American family, according to Biden's mythology." Now, do gas prices compared to a year ago? Snake oil salesman, lone conservative founder Cassidy Dillon tweeted. Biden previously suggested that rising gas prices and inflation rates were caused by a Putin price hike due to the war in Ukraine. Since prices have fallen after their peak in June, while the war rages on, the administration has now started to take credit for the average price for a gallon of gas falling below $5. However, most states continue to pay more than $4 a gallon for gas, with the average price as of Monday at $4.36. When Biden took office on January 2021, the average cost was $2.39 a gallon. So they're going down, and it makes you almost wonder if they were to go back up, if he would be taking credit for the increase again, or if it's just back to Putin. So I don't know. So if we were to do like linear logic here, if it was Putin's fault that gas prices were increasing, then it would be Putin's fault that gas prices were going down. But because they're going down, Joe Biden wants to take all the credit. Well, what's the gaffe in all this? Yeah, there's some weird trickery of the numbers and stuff like that we highlighted, but many users also called out that the blatant typo in the graphic using a person instead of a person in an official government tweet. Look, I'm all about people making mistakes. I get it. You misspeak or have misspoken. I do it all the time on the show when I'm recording it. You're trying to think about all sorts of things. You fumble through your words because you have so much in your mind. You try to slow down because you naturally just talk so fast. All sorts of things. But this is being vetted. Like, there's people that make this. There's interns. There's advisors. There's people that look at this before the president just sends it out. But he says, for one person, for one person. The sad thing is Joe Biden really does talk like that, right? So that's great. I hope paying too much for a pessin inflation is a ban on the nation's economy, Washington Times reporter Mike Glenn tweeted. Townhall.com editor Rebecca Downs wrote, "Who spell checked this? What is a pessin?" How many people were involved in planning, designing, editing, and sending this poster? Minimum of 5, probably a lot more, yet it still went out with a glaring typo. Tells you a lot about how this White House is staffed up and ran, tweeted Hans, was that Mackel, co-host of the Truth Over News, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name. I love how I'm ripping Biden here for not knowing how to say things, and I'm coming on not knowing how to say things. Real Clear Investigation senior writer Mark Hemingway wrote, "Could be overthinking it because competence is not a Biden administration strong suit, but what are the chances a typo is intentional? A way of getting people to talk about the graphic, stray voltage and all that." So, I mean, there is some truth to that, right? Is that Biden gaffes get views. They get the recognition. Yes, they're making fun of them, but there is a sense of rationale behind, hey, let's put out a typo. People are going to talk about it. And now we're back in the news again regarding an agenda and a narrative that we're trying to push. Because look, people are still going to talk about the gas prices going down in conjunction with the aspect of you just made a gaffe and your White House looks like a bunch of knuckleheads. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre made a similar claim about falling gas prices on Thursday with a video on the White House Twitter account. She likewise ignored the fact that gas prices are still $2 higher than they were when Biden took office. And there was a famous clip recently with Peter Doocy of Fox News highlighting the fact that, look, gas prices are still $2 higher than he took office. But when she talks about, well, let's go back and kind of revisit how this all started, she talks right when Putin invaded Ukraine. She doesn't talk about before when Biden took office. You know, again, they're the problem. They're the reason why we have inflation. They're the reason why we have an increase at the pump because of their Democrat-ran policies and the Democrat-ran government from the judicial to the legislature to the executive. So it's all their fault. You have a recession, don't want to admit it. You have illegal immigration taking over our cities. You don't want to admit it. You want to blame the Republicans in the southern states. You have climate activists lighting themselves on fire and gluing their faces to things and their hands. Then you have Joe Biden making a gaffe on Twitter. Unbelievable news, folks. I hope you had as much fun as I did. As always, I really do look forward to spending these mornings with all of you. I don't just say it. It's not just a gag. It really is what I mean. You are all true American patriots. And now, as always, if you want to support us here at the Bald Brad Show, hit that like and subscribe button. Leave us great reviews and comments. And I look forward to reading all of them. And folks, I will see you later here on the Bald Brad Show.